Good evening. It's kind of dark outside because it's overcast. It's been raining. It's not raining right now, but it's been raining. And when there's not much light coming from anywhere else, that lamp becomes a bit too much. But I can still see, and you can see me, right? So we'll begin with the verse of the Kesa. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. I wear the Tathagata's teaching, freeing all creations. Gata of Atonement. All evil karma ever committed by me since old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. All evil karma ever committed by me since of old, on account of my beginningless greed, anger, and ignorance, born of my body, mouth, and thought, now I atone for it all. Three bows. The fragrance of this incense invites the awakened mind to be present with us now. The fragrance of this incense fills our room, protects and guards our minds from wrong thinking. The fragrance of this incense unites us with precepts, concentration, and insight. We offer it for all beings. Homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. I go to the Buddha for guidance. I shall become one with the Buddha. I resolve that I shall each day follow the way of life he laid down for us to walk and awaken to his supreme wisdom. I go to the Dharma for guidance. I shall become one with the Dharma. The gates of Dharma are manifold. I vow to enter them all. The goal of wisdom is ever beyond. I shall attain it. I go to the Sangha for guidance. I shall become one with the Sangha. In the spirit of universal fellowship and as a member of the Sangha, I pledge myself to strive for the enlightenment of all beings. The Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud and demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upward to the skies and downward to the depths, outward and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will, whether standing or walking, sitting or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into the world of suffering. Metta prayer. May I be happy and well. May no harm come to me. May I learn compassion. May all my friends, family, and those I love be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those troubled in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those who have hurt me in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all those I have hurt in body, mind, and spirit be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all my enemies be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. May all living beings be happy and well. May no harm come to them. May they learn compassion. Okay. I invite you to close your eyes or otherwise look into your hearts. Take a few deep breaths. Breathing in, be aware of any tension in your body or mind. Breathing out, let that go. Breathing in, let your belly soften so your lungs can fill completely. Breathing out, relax a little deeper. And let your breath settle into a comfortable rhythm. No need to breathe in any special way. Just breathe naturally, deeply, calmly. Awareness on the breath, tip of your nose. Sensation of breath coming and going past that point. Feel it at the entrance to your nostrils or the air moving across your upper lip. Sink your attention down to the center of your chest, aware of the breath filling and emptying your lungs. And then down to your belly, to the pit of your stomach, the hara, that's the Japanese word, kind of behind and below your navel. So we're going to use the breath to be more aware of the body. And this is really to accomplish a couple of things. So this particular method we're going to use help us relax a little deeper. and help us become a little bit more sensitive to the way breath moves in the body. Bring your attention into your feet. Excuse me. And be aware of the joints in your feet. There's a lot of bones in your feet. So maybe they're resting on the floor. Just imagine that the bones just loosen up and the feet can just flatten out on the floor. So like we always do, bring your attention to that area. Bring your awareness of the breath as if you're breathing through that area. And release whatever can release, and accept whatever else is going on. In this case, you bring the breath attention to that area. You might feel almost like you're breathing through your joints. Where your joints open up and where your breath can flow through them. And then up into your ankles. Letting the ankles be loose and relaxed. All those little bones separating, not being stuck together. Just opening up, relaxing. Awareness of the breath moving through that area. To your knees. Tension, breath, release, accept. Up to your hips. Feeling those joints just opening up, relaxing, releasing. Lower back. Just kind of focus on the lumbar curve there, the region between your tailbone and your ribs. Vertebra just separating a little bit. Opening up, releasing, breath flowing through that area. And up into the area of your rib cage and the upper spine. Ribs kind of floating free, joints releasing. Back releasing. Release and accept. The shoulders, there's a lot of bones and joints around the shoulders. Just kind of feel them all loosening up. Where your shoulders connect to your spine, where the shoulder blades connect, where the arms connect to the sockets. And down to your elbows. All the little bones in the wrist. All the bones in your hands. And then up to your neck. And let the neck kind of extend, almost like you were suspended from the crown of your head. Your ears might pull back slightly, but let the vertebra open up. And just take a moment just to let yourself hang from the crown of your head and all those joints just opening up a little bit more, everything settling down toward the floor. Aware of your breath flowing through your whole body. If you like, you can note your breaths, Budo, or you can count your breaths 1 to 10 and then start over. Or if your attention is settling comfortably on the breath, then don't worry about that. And I'll give you a couple minutes just to sit with the breath. So let me know how that worked out for you. So that's I've never encountered that particular way of meditating in any other Buddhist context. It's kind of like something that I do with my Tai Chi students. Sort of helps them. Long story. It has to do with like the way you move energy in your body in Tai Chi. But it occurred to me that it's probably helpful. I think it's a good way of kind of working through mindfulness of the body, and people seem to feel it gets them relaxed in a little bit deeper way. So meditation is not a relaxation technique, but it helps to have a calm mind and body when you're doing it. I think that's a useful practice. I do it sometimes just to get everything to settle down. So I thought I would share that with you. So let me know how it went for you. So tonight's drama talk is a little bit different. Maybe not enormously Buddhist, but hopefully useful to you. So to start us off, I'm going to share you some quotes with you. These are comments from famous people that I admire. None of them were Buddhist, and all of them were curmudgeons. So this is from George Orwell, and you probably know who Orwell was, but in case you didn't, he's an English author who was very concerned about power and government and bureaucracy and things like that. And he wrote, on the whole, human beings want to be good, but not too good and not quite all the time. This one's from G.K. Chesterton, who is a British philosopher and theologian. It is not funny that anything else should fall down, only that a man should fall down. Why do we laugh? Because it is a gravely religious matter. It is the fall of man. Only man can be absurd, for only man can be dignified. This is from one of my favorite philosophers, Voltaire. I have only ever made one prayer to God, a very short one. O Lord, make my enemies ridiculous. And God granted it. And finally, from Mark Twain, I like this one especially. When angry, count 4. When very angry, swear. So you're probably wondering why I am sharing those with you. Well, you might find this hard to believe, but I've not always been a nice person. Back in the early 90s, it seemed for a while like everywhere I went, people were talking about their inner child and doing inner child workshops, or their counselor or guru, and how they were telling them how to embrace their inner child and all that kind of stuff. And I remember I was at this party, and I was sitting in somebody's living room, and several people were talking about the inner child stuff that they were doing. And this one very well-intentioned person asked me something about whether I was working with my inner child or not. And one of the other people there, someone that I knew very well, had a close relationship with, said, oh, Morris doesn't have an inner child. He has an inner curmudgeon. Well, I might have been embarrassed by that comment or taken offense at it, except it was pretty true. During that whole conversation, my inner curmudgeon had been thinking that some of these inner children needed discipline. And it got me, thinking about the role that curmudgeons play, or my own curmudgeon played in my life. So according to the dictionary, a curmudgeon is a crusty, ill-tempered old man. Well, at that point, again, this was at least 25 years ago, maybe close to 30. I don't remember exactly when it happened. I didn't qualify as a full-fledged curmudgeon because I wasn't old enough yet, but the seed was definitely there. So I've done a lot of work on that aspect of myself since then, and I'm told that I have a reputation for being compassionate. I've worked at it, and compassion is one of the primary elements of Buddhist practice. And besides the positive effect of compassion on my reputation, practicing compassion has also made me a lot less miserable. It's really hard work to go around judging people all the time, so it's a huge relief to me to not have to do that. But I have always known that tendency remains there, even though, thank goodness, it is dormant much of the time. So I was thinking about this a little while back. One of the Buddhist magazines sends out these Dharma things once in a while, and they'll link to an essay to their online version or something like that. So there was a link to an essay by one of their contributors who was a famous Dharma teacher, and I can't remember who it was. But they pulled a quote from this essay, which is about living in mindfulness. And it said, to be mindful means to realize a non-reactive way of life. Which sounds reasonable enough. Well, a lot of the time, people who start studying and practicing Buddhism will come to me about the problems they're having. And a lot of time they're talking about obstacles in their practice. And many times they are struggling with mental habits that have been with them for decades. And they've read something from some well-intended Dharma teacher that says that they shouldn't be reacting out of habit this way. And so these habits include reacting to things. You can't just jump right into a non-reactive way of life because you're suddenly practicing meditation. In fact, I'm told that I'm a Zen master and I react to things. And in fact, I was just reading this book of compiled teachings by this famous Korean Zen master, and a lot of his discourses involved him threatening to whack a student with a stick. And his students always reacted to that. Sometimes they react by having an awakening, but not always. Sometimes they react by getting whacked with a stick and hurting. But Even if we have been practicing for a long time, we will at times react to things in ways that don't measure up to our to some ideal, uh, some spiritual ideal. And that's okay. We don't have to cut ourselves off from our nature in order to make progress along our path. Just because you started a spiritual practice, that doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect. We can adopt wisdom and compassion as our highest values, but that doesn't make us instantly perfectly wise and compassionate, not by a long shot. And I have to say that I'm not entirely unhappy with my inner curmudgeon. I think some of those characteristics are not always all that bad. If you think about some of the curmudgeons in the world, you'll realize that your inner curmudgeon or crank, crosspatch, grump, discontent, or whatever you choose to call it, is in fairly good company. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these people. So those people that I quoted earlier all had reputations for being difficult and all had a pretty major impact on how we see the world and society. They also all happen to be males. Curmudgeons are generally thought of as older men. There are probably plenty of women and young people who share a lot of characteristics within those. So if you happen to be female or under 50, you can still be a curmudgeon. But I have a lot of admiration for people like G.K. Chesterton, for example. I mentioned he was an English philosopher and theologian and a very interesting guy. And he understood well the difficulty that I'm discussing today, the difficulty of truly knowing one's own self. He said, one may understand the cosmos, but never the ego. The self is more distant than any star. French Enlightenment philosopher Voltaire and English novelist George Orwell used their ability to see deeply into society and kind of reveal things that a lot of other people in their society were overlooking. So Voltaire shared Chesterton's suspicion of the ego. He said it's not love that should be depicted as blind, but self-love. In other words, loving other people is one thing, but our love for our own ego makes it very easy for us to overlook our own shortcomings. But his real strength was in pointing out the changes that were needed if humankind was to progress. And he was willing to cause trouble in order to facilitate change. He once said, "To the living we owe respect, to the dead we owe only the truth." So, boy, that's really profound when you think about that. What is it? Respect. People like it when you show them respect. But if you really want your life to have meaning beyond this existence, then you owe truth. Anyway, Orwell was probably most famous for his novel 1984, and he had a reputation for being unfriendly, to say the least. And he was not afraid to be critical when he found it necessary. He said, if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they don't want to hear. And I think this is particularly relevant today. During times of universal deceit, telling the truth becomes a revolutionary act. That's from Orwell, not me. And you don't have to have a political situation like this one for people to grasp onto things that sound good, that make them feel good, but that aren't particularly truthful in any real meaningful way. Like I was thinking about this. I'm gonna give another Dharma talk about this soon, but I'll touch on it briefly here. I've kind of screwed up, and I'm a little guilty of something that I feel bad about. There's somebody said to me, not too long ago, maybe a couple of years ago. This was a person who practiced Buddhism for a long time. They grew up in a Buddhist society, and they had been listening to my Dharma talks and said something like, I didn't realize until just now that this practice was for your own benefit and happiness. Um, when you practice the Dharma, you are happier and you do benefit from it. But that's not why you do it. You do it because it's the right thing to do. Okay? Now that's truthful. That's not going to make me that's not going to make me the world's most popular Dharma teacher. Just say that. But happiness is a side effect of the practice. It's not why we do it. And you might not be happy, but it's okay. Do it anyway because you'll be happier than you would have been. Number one, and you'll be better. Feeling good, and being good are not necessarily the same thing, right? So, truth. I'll just move on. I'll just leave it there and move on. So, Mark Twain was one of my favorite curmudgeons, and he was brilliant at recognizing the fallibility of humanity. And he once said, "Man is the only animal that blushes or needs to." Which is nice. We can recognize when we screw up, right? We probably screw up more often than most animals do. The dog here, she's just a dog, right? She doesn't have to judge what she does. She just got to eat and sleep. We have to think a little bit harder about what we do. Anyway, but Twain wasn't afraid to recognize his own strengths, and he wasn't afraid to poke fun at his own ego. He said, "There's nothing you can say in answer to a compliment. I have been complimented myself a great many times, and they always embarrass me. I always feel like they have not said enough." But like Shantideva, who was the 8th century Buddhist scholar, Twain recognized the value of non-Buddhas. He said, "Let us be thankful for the fools, but for them the rest of us could not succeed." But he was actually a very compassionate person. He said, "Nothing that grieves us can be called little. By the eternal laws of proportion, a child's loss of a doll and a king's loss of a crown are events of the same size." Suffering is suffering. It's never, you can always kind of put your suffering in different perspective and so on, but even a little hurt can be a major hurt. But he said that wrinkles should really indicate where smiles have been, and pointed out that grief can take care of itself, but to get the full value of the joy, you have to have somebody to divide it with. Well, anyway, if you want to get anywhere with your practice, with your life, then you have to start by accepting whatever is there. There's no point in rejecting yourself or trying to cut off some part of yourself or deny yourself. In Buddhism, we talk about finding our true self, which is where our Buddha nature lies. We can't reveal our true self if we're trying to keep some part of it hidden. So we don't have to demolish any curmudgeonly tendencies we have. As Voltaire pointed out, if you seek to destroy the passions instead of controlling them, that's like trying to play an angel. We don't need to play the angel or play anything else. To be really compassionate, we need to just be honest with ourselves, first of all. Accepting whatever's there, though, doesn't mean you have to nurture those parts that are unskillful. You don't have to feed every beast that you find in your psyche. I'll share a few things that I do in order to accept but still manage my innate tendency to be judgmental and cranky and all that stuff. And sometimes to get overly worked up when I recognize injustice, and hopefully you can use these too if you need them. So first, I try to restrain my speech. I had this conversation with a guy a few months ago. He was married to a woman who was attending one of my classes at the Y when I was still teaching there. And I bumped into them in downtown DeLand, and I was talking to him. I said, "Hey, how come you haven't been coming to class?" And he said, "Well, nobody wants me around." So he used a more derogatory term. But he said, and I looked at him kind of funny, and he said, "Well, it's just the way I am." Well, just because something pops into your head, that doesn't mean that it has to come out of your mouth, right? So if you can be as big a jerk internally as you want to, but if you don't say anything about it, maybe people won't notice, right? And then I remind myself that no matter how right I feel, there's still a good chance that I'm wrong. You know, we're always right to ourselves, right? But even though I feel totally justified a lot of the time, I make mistakes where there's multiple ways to see an issue and stuff like that. I might not have the right one. But the third thing is, even if I am indisputably right, it's just not all about me, right? So you might be as totally justified in your anger, or totally justified in your opinion, but you know the rest of the world doesn't really need to see that. There's no reason they should see that, right? Because everybody else is looking at things from their perspective too. And lastly, don't generalize. I might think, oh, you know, I hate people who watch Fox News. But then I remember this guy I know who loaned me a chainsaw after one of the big storms, and I had a tree come down and I needed to cut it up. And he watches Fox News, and I don't hate him. Or you hate the evangelicals. But then when you look at the individuals that you know who happen to go to certain churches, yeah, they're just people, right? So remember, the world isn't groups of people. It's not categories of people. It's made up of individuals. And if we treat them as human, we find ourselves living in a kind of world. So just because you know you have an inner curmudgeon or whatever it is you choose to call yours doesn't mean that you have to let it be in charge. Doesn't mean you have to give it keys to your mind and let it drive you around wherever it wants to go. It means that you can recognize that there you have this tendency. Occasionally wants to arise and start judging things and judging other people and judging yourself and all of that. And then you can decide what to do with these tendencies. So, you know, I sometimes go ahead and listen to my inner curmudgeon. Sometimes the story he wants to tell is important. And sometimes I say, shut up, old man, I'm tired of your negativity. So to pretend that it's not there would be inauthentic. But to tell it to shut up, you know, that can be kind of intimate. So thank you for your attention. I hope this was helpful to you. And I'm going to look now and see if anybody's asked any questions. Well, this is interesting. My tablet froze up. So I'm going to look at my phone. I can kind of see on the other screen that there's at least one question or comment. So bear with me for a minute while I try to figure this out. I don't know why that happened. I don't know why that happened. This one's working. So somebody wants to know more about the Tai Chi classes. I teach Tai Chi in the park in DeLand. And if you're interested, they're Monday, Thursday, and Saturday mornings at 7:45 a.m. And if you're interested in knowing more about that, just email me and I'll tell you more about that. Ellen says, female curmudgeons are usually called battle axes, harridans, or other unfortunate names. Some I like. Gertrude Stein, Calamity Jane. Yeah, Gertrude Stein, she's an excellent, excellent example of that. Lots of great, very funny Gertrude Stein quotes out there. I'm sorry I didn't think of her. I'm not that familiar with Calamity Jane. I mean, I know who she was, just know that much about her. And I knew the battle axe thing, but that sounds so disparaging. I didn't want to mention it. Harridan, I hadn't thought about Harridan. That's good. Okay, well, I don't see any other questions. So just a reminder, tomorrow, Thursday, we meet on Zoom. And if you want to talk to me more about curmudgeonness, feel free to show up on that, at that. We'll also be deciding soon what we're going to do about meeting at the church, whether we're going to return to meeting at the church or not. So if you have a feeling about that, let me know. If we do, at the very least, we'll record services and post them online. I've noticed that, excuse me, Wednesdays, we get about 10 people watching. I forgot to look and see who's watching tonight. So we got eight people watching now. If I go back and look a couple of days from now, probably about 30 people, between 30 and 40 people will have watched this by this time next week. So, meaning, about a fourth or thereabouts, a third to a fourth of the people who are watching it are watching live. Some of you I know come to the meetings if we start meeting at the church. But at the very least, we'll record the services and I'll put them up after I get home. Next Wednesday, I actually have to be at a vigil for a Stetson University thing, so I'm going to pre-record the service next Wednesday. It'll be there when you get here Wednesday evening, but it'll be pre-recorded. And I'm actually gonna. It's the anniversary of the Beatles' "All You Need Is Love" broadcast. So I'm going to talk about that. It's a good, interesting song, interesting thing to give a talk about. So that'll be next Wednesday. All right. Buddha nature pervades the whole universe, existing right here now, and offering flowers, candles, and incense, hearing the Dharma and training the mind, great merit is attained. We dedicate this merit to the great Master Shakyamuni Buddha, the all-pervading and everlasting three treasures, to the 16 guardians and all protectors of the Dharma and their relations throughout space and time, to all ancestors of this Sangha and all beings in the Dharma world. May penetrating light dispel the darkness of ignorance. Let all karma be resolved in the mind flower bloom in eternal spring. May the Dharma body maintain strength and health, and years of life be lengthened for all teachers of this Sangha. May their vows be fully realized, and may they live in perfect peace with Buddha Dharma. We pray for all those suffering from violence and those who grieve for them, for those living in oppression, for all who are in prison who should be free, and for all refugees from violence, hunger, and catastrophe, man-made or natural. We pray for the health and well-being of those suffering from diseases of body, mind, or spirit, all those working toward the healing of those afflictions, for those suffering from COVID-19, those working to protect and treat them, and those grieving for those lost to this pandemic. At this time, we have members of our congregations, friends, and loved ones suffering from disease, and those who are grieving for losses. We pray for them and send loving thoughts their way. May they all be serene through their troubles, and may we realize the enlightened way together. Sabbe sata sadahantu avera sukha jivino katang punya phalang mahang sabbe bhagi bhavantu te. May all beings always live happily, free from animosity. May all share in the blessings that spring from the good we have done. Thank you, and I will see you soon.